It scared me, kind of. Like, it was like, wow, I wish this was the Halloween episode, but it wasn't. So we're here to trick or treat, and unfortunately there's no treat, and it's all trick. Fresh off of a refit of Starbase 80, we're now en route to Starbase 00B? What the heck is that? What's that thing? That's gotta be the oldest hardware I've ever seen in my life. This thing predates Starfleet itself. Why is this still here? Oh well, we gotta get it fixed somehow. What? Starbase 80? Hopefully you could hear the question mark at the end of that sentence, because the question mark is in the title of this episode. This episode is called Starbase 80. Yes, with the question mark. This is the midpoint of Star Trek Lower Decks Season 5, the final season. We're halfway through the end. You wouldn't think it by watching it, because this episode is irreverent, disjointed, uneven, but ultimately fun, and seems to have nothing to do with the overarching plot of this season. If there is an overarching plot of this season. With that out of the way, let's see what's going on with Starbase 80. Starbase 80, as you know, is very, very old, and Mariner was sent there as a punishment one time, when she was kicked off the Cerritos momentarily. This being lower decks, punishment is not severe, it's always temporary, and cliffhangers resolve themselves instantly. So, I wasn't really worried about Mariner coming back from Starbase 80, nor was I worried about Starbase 80 being bad, because it's not that bad, it's just old. And I like old things. So I'm excited to finally go to Starbase 80. And I was happy that we went there when I finished this episode. We're, at the beginning of this episode, we're doing one of those Star Trek things where, like, a previously on. We're showing where we previously were. We were on a planet, Piscus 9, I believe it was called, a water planet, where we had to look at glow-in-the-dark algae and stuff like that. And wouldn't you know it, Mariner's starting to enjoy it. Very good. That's what I like to see. I would have liked to see that 2 seasons ago. The birth of normal and standard Mariner, as per Starfleet. What you would imagine a Starfleet officer to be like. Unfortunately, this is probably too little too late. And another thing that's too little too late is that these characters are lieutenants now. And they have ensigns working under them. But where are they? We're halfway through this season. I think I can comment on this. The ensigns that are supposed to be working with their characters, I can't even remember their names. Boimler had some. It's a problem that I can't remember them, because we had an opportunity to introduce some new funny characters this season. We're not doing it. There's supposed to be ensigns here. Where are they? They don't factor into anything, and these characters might as well still just be ensigns. It's written that way. Very odd. So after we come back from Piscus 9 and we're trying to get our scuba suits off, we can't get them off, Mariner hilariously rips Boimler's off. There's a problem. We need to be at a captain's conference in 24 hours, but there's something wrong with the navigational processor. Since this is animated Trek, I don't know what this is about, but in Prodigy and now in Lower Decks, dolphins/whales play a role with navigation now, as they did behind the scenes. If you look really close with a microscope, you might be able to see that dolphins and quote-unquote cetacean ops played a factor, or didn't, way back in the days of TNG. And now they're back because this is animated Trek. I don't know why. A unifying feature so far of both animated shows is that they have cetacean ops. And this one, we're using these dolphins, I guess they are, for navigation. Okay, they assist in navigation. I don't know if they're the whole kit and caboodle for how navigation works. I would certainly hope not, because that would leave ships with those cetacean ops in a bit of a pickle. But these cetacean characters are experiencing some kind of difficulty on screen. They get zapped. They start to glow, and oh no, they're hurt. There's something wrong with the navigational system. What are we going to do? I guess we can't warp without cetacean ops, or we can't warp without a key component at cetacean ops. I'm not sure which one it was. After watching it multiple times, I don't know if they can't do it because of the navigational processor specifically, or we need cetacean ops to use that processor, or the processor itself is broken. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but there's something wrong with navigation. We can only go on impulse. Interestingly, usually when warp is down, we say something to do with the warp system is broken, not navigation. So this is a little bit of an interesting treat insofar as things going wrong. And when your technology is so advanced, you got to be really careful with how you write it for it to go wrong. After all, the point of technology is not to save you in Star Trek, it's to get you lost. Technology breaks so that you can have a plot, right? Who was this? I think Doug Drexler talked about this. I remember reading this in the magazine. When he first began to work on Star Trek, somebody asked him, what's a shuttlecraft for? And he said, well, you use a shuttlecraft to get down to the planet. And then they said, no, a shuttlecraft is so that you can get lost. That's the actual reason for it. So a lot of this technology is actually designed to have a plot, which means it has to break, which sucks. Especially for me, because I'm an engineer, and I have to make these things work. And I feel personally slighted when things don't. So we have to go to Starbase 80. It's the nearest one on Impulse. The next one that we could get to was like 400 years away or something like that. So in truest Star Trek fashion, we have to go to we're either the nearest ship in range or the nearest place we can go is some dump. Classic Star Trek. I wish this was a Halloween episode. We had, mysteriously, an episode of Lower Decks come out on Halloween, but it wasn't this one. What was it? Nanite Hotel, I think it was. And then this one is clearly a Halloween episode. It even has, spoilers, it has zombies, bats, darkness, and fog. Wow. Why wasn't this on Halloween? It bears no significance where it occurs in the timeline of this season, because this one and the one that was airing on Halloween had, from what I could tell at this point, had no bearing on the overarching plot of this season, insofar as there is one. Why couldn't they just swap them? Do you know? I thought that was very mysterious. Anyway, we have to go to Starbase 80. Hopefully they have a spare navigational processor for us, even though our ship is much newer than their station. Would they have it? I don't know. But one thing leads to another, and our crew, including Ransom and the captain, as well as the lower deckers we know and love, are now docking at Starbase 80, much to the chagrin of Mariner. Mariner doesn't want to go back there, although nobody on this starbase seems to remember Mariner, but Mariner remembers this starbase. Oh, what's that about? Did Mariner just come here and hide? Maybe. Last time Mariner was here, she fell in an open ditch. How can there be an open ditch in a starbase? I have no idea. But we meet Kassia Knox. This character is her diplomatic liaison or something from the starbase to the Cerritos crew, and she has that awesome Star Trek Enterprise outfit. And by the way, pause anywhere in this video, and you're going to see something really cool from TOS or before. So this this episode is a real visual smorgasbord. I'll tell you that much right off the bat. We need to split up here. Half of our characters are going to try to fix parts of this ship. We need to fix deck plating. There's some areas where the gravity is backwards. But our captain and Ransom have to go find the chief engineer so we can get our hands on this navigational processor or what have you. So we're splitting up. Always a bad idea, especially if you're in a treacherous place like Starbase 80. Don't split up, guys. Stick together. You stick together, you survive. You break apart, and you're going to probably have a bad time on Starbase 80. Well, that remains to be seen. Our characters go to the reactor room, and Tendi is flabbergasted by this wonderful, old, cute fusion reactor that isn't old to me. That's brand new, baby. 2280s. Actually, that's a little bit in the future. Wow, I would love to get my hands on this future technology. They're selling corn dogs in engineering, which was hilarious. Again, don't think about it too hard. Would this starbase really look this old? Just because it's old, you mean it wouldn't go through refits? It wouldn't be up to code? It wouldn't be at a Starfleet standard? Don't think about it too hard. Just go along for the ride. This engineering room needs all kinds of repairs. But Billups, comm badge, Billups is moaning. What? He's just groaning like a brain-hungry zombie. Must have been the breakfast burrito. It didn't sit well with him. Yeah, that's it, Rutherford. That's what it was. So we gradually realize that there's an issue of people catching the 80, as Mariner calls it. People go to Starbase 80 and they mysteriously start turning into buffoons. I'm sure there's a perfectly reasonable scientific answer for why this is. Although what's happening is that as people access their comm badge, oops, they start to turn into glowing-eyed, green, wall-licky zombies. Whoa. What's going on here? Now, your first instinct, and the instinct of our characters most likely, is that this is a problem specific to Starbase 80. But you'll notice it's coming from the comm badges. They don't have comm badges on Starbase 80. So what's the deal? Is this disease, as it were, coming from the Cerritos? You'll see this episode is about second chances. We were so worried about Starbase 80 giving us the 80 and making us crazy. Actually, we're flipping the script here. It's the opposite. It appears that this zombification disease is coming from the Cerritos. After a big fight between Kassia and Mariner that I don't know what was about, calls to mind fights that were in that episode, what was it? Mirrors of the final season of Discovery, where characters are fighting, and I had long since forgot why. After a mind-numbing fight between Kassia and Mariner, they kind of agree that it is the comm badges. By the way, they arrive at the medical area. I love this guy, Dr. Horseberry, that they meet. Why is he so strange, or something like that, Mariner says. And then Kassia says he's British. And then, not to be outdone, later on, Mariner asks, why can you fight so well? And Kassia says, I'm an Elorian, even though I'm only 30. What did this mean? Do you know what this means? I don't understand. Why was this here? It's not funny. It's not a joke. It's just kind of there. It doesn't play into anything. You know, you don't want to kind of reveal these things. If it's not a joke, then in your brain you're thinking, okay, when does this pay off? It doesn't. It also doesn't pay off that Dr. Horseberry is British. I do not understand the joke. Like, does anybody know what that means? Like, why is this significant? Why did we say it? I don't understand. Did it play anything into anything else that happened later, and I was just too, went over my head or under my feet? I don't know. Horseberry has half of his body given over to, like, the Tarchanin, I think it was called, Parasite. Remember that really freaky episode of Next Generation where Geordi started turning into an alien? He got some kind of parasite on his body, and he was turning into one of them from that planet that he went to or whatever. That was freaking terrifying back in the day. And now Dr. Horseberry has it, but he was told it was barely noticeable. He managed to stop it halfway through when it was taking over his body. What an idea. By the way, the characters we're meeting here on Starbase 80, they're just lovely. I love the Doctor. I love Gene. I love Kassia. I love this guy selling corn dogs, Chad. Let's go here. Let's go to Starbase 80. Let's have a Starbase 80 show. Let's do it. These characters, they just introduced them right off the bat, and I love them all. I know I say this for a lot of, frankly, all new Trek, is that they introduce new characters, and they're awesome. These characters show up out of nowhere, and they're, more entertaining in many cases than our key cast of characters. How do they do that? They do that a lot. They just write in some random characters, and they're just more interesting and fun on screen than our actual main characters sometimes. Not all the time, but I do love these characters. And Starbase 80 goes from being something terrifying to being something heartwarming, which, for Lower Decks, that's a real accomplishment. I don't want to, get too far into the weeds for how I'm doing on this episode as a whole. And I don't want to preemptively spoil you on the end of this review. But Starbase 80 really grew on me like a fungus. Anyway, we need to find the source of what's affecting our comm badges and making us all go crazy. Mariner scans a comm badge, and there is biological material on the comm badge. The comm badges originate from the Cerritos, so we have to go back to the Cerritos. And we do, only to realize the Cerritos is basically encumbered with zombies everywhere. The disease that has affected our crew has truly spread across the entirety of our starship. What are we going to do? According to a wall display, the problem here originated from this area, and Kassia looks at it. What is this? That's Cetacean Ops, of course. Remember back when this episode began? Cetacean Ops had a glitch. Our cetacean characters, our dolphins, whatever their names were, started just screaming and glowing green. Maybe that meant something. So we go down there, Kassia, Mariner, and the Doctor, Mr. Horseberry, go down there only to see one of our dolphin characters glowing green and puking some kind of green lightning onto the ship's display. in that area, and it was kind of freaky. Like this, the way the dolphin ominously just burped up a green beam of light. It scared me, kind of like, it was like, wow, I wish this was the Halloween episode, but it wasn't. So we're here to trick or treat, and unfortunately there's no treat, and it's all trick, because one of these dolphins zaps Mariner, and she can feel herself turning stupid. And after a clash with the dolphin, I don't like to keep saying dolphin, but I don't remember what his name is. And I don't think he's a whale, because he's too small. He's some kind of character. He's an aquatic mammal. Okay? That's who he is. Maybe not anymore. Maybe he's being taken over by some weird parasite. And that turns out to be the case. After Dr. Horseberry saves the day. Yeah, would you have guessed? Dr. Horseberry from Starbase 80 saves the day by whacking him with like a broom or some kind of metal rod. Just bang! and then he pukes up a green glowy parasite that he picked up from, you guessed it, Piscus 9. They were on a mission to a water world where, of course, you would take the aquatic characters. And then they picked up a strange parasite. And wouldn't you know it, that parasite was the mind behind all the other brain infestations amongst our crew and the crew of Starbase 80, insofar as they used a comm badge. It was traveling along comm badges. And this parasite was using these zombies, took over too many minds, and was using their tongues and hands to feel around the world in 3D space. So not unlike Best Exotic Nanite Hotel, what we have here is a comedy of errors, in that another being that we had a hard time interacting with from our point of view and in our space and our frame of mind, trying to communicate with us, trying to do something, trying to help themselves, trying not to be bad, ended up kind of accidentally hurting us. And we do the nice thing and forgive them. We've called this parasite Clem. This character, Clem, this green ghost character, was only doing what they were supposed to do by their own bosses, which was to communicate, trying to communicate with us, get information, talk, which we're doing now because we put it in what looks like a little bit too much like a microwave. And Kassia, Mariner, and the rest are able to talk to it like normal. It's win-win, but hopefully nobody died while being a zombie. That would be unfortunate. So you see, in a nutshell, Starbase 80 saves itself from the Cerritos. Very cool. That's our A plot. Or at least what I feel is the A plot. Our B plot, of course, is finding good old Gene. That's right, Gene. We need to find the chief engineer, Gene, who at this point is not the chief engineer, but I could make some guesses as to who the chief engineer was going to be. Chief Engineer Jakubowski. We go to the control room for the Starbase, and he's literally sleeping on the panel with alarms going off. And by the way, this is real. People sleeping through alarms, I've seen this. I know this. Some places, believe me, have alarms that are going off all the time. And there's nothing you can do about it because you can't fix it. You don't have the tools to fix it. You don't have the time. You don't have the resources, the know-how. Or sometimes alarms are just like a false positive. And alarms are constantly going off. And you know they're supposed to be going off. But nobody has come around to fix the alarm itself. So the alarm is like oversensitive or gives you bad readings. So the alarm is just constantly going off. And workers learn to sleep through the alarms. This is real. So I don't know if they had any personal knowledge of this, but I took this in a different way than maybe the writers did, because I've been in this situation. Gene is sleeping through these alarms, but Captain Freeman has one of those new fancy tricorders that could fix the alarm system for him. That's great. Where do we need to go? Oh, we need to go to level 33. But we just came from there. They end up going over there. Half the station is taken over by Akamarians, real gangster types, with knives and all that. But of course, in lower decks and in Starbase 80 fashion, they end up being nice guys. We need to go to the arcade. We need to go to the maintenance labyrinth, which we accidentally go to. That's right, maintenance labyrinth. Another laugh out loud moment when I was watching this. According to, they get in the turbo lift, and the computer voice literally says maintenance labyrinth when they're trying to go to the arcade, and they end up in a very freaky, foggy area that's so dark, where Gene is trying to get bats out of an air pipe and there's a bat attached to his face, and it's all very spooky and amusing in its own right. And Gene basically just says, we'll have to go to the arcade, blah, blah, blah. So we go to the arcade because they don't have those fancy holosuites, on Starbase 80. And Gene is in the arcade, but the Akamarian people, I believe that's what they were called, said that Jakubowski is in the arcade. Put 2 and 2 together. Can you do it? That's right. I guessed this immediately when this began. Gene is Chief Engineer Jakubowski, and he was just leading us along this whole episode. He was stringing us along, trying to get us to fix things, because Starfleet never sends down anybody here to fix anything, and they leave poor Gene alone down here to fix it with what he has. Spit, moss, clay, tape, those types of things that have no business fixing complicated fusion reactors from vintage 2200s. And he was just trying to get us to help him. He just... if he said that the chief engineer is here, and we had to go to all these places, and he just kind of led us down the garden path, maybe Ransom and Captain Freeman would end up fixing some things. And they did. And it was hard for me to fault him. By the time we got to the end, I felt just like Freeman. Captain Freeman said, maybe we haven't been totally upfront with you. Starfleet never sends anybody down here to help you. We're sorry. Let's go fix some stuff, Mr. Jakubowski. And I couldn't help but just in that moment realize, Jakubowski is not, as Ransom says, Starfleet line to Starfleet, come on, Ransom, come on, have a heart. This was so cute. I don't know. We went from, and leave it to Lower Decks to have an episode be a Halloween episode and then turn heartwarming and even cute. And I couldn't help it feeling that. Look, Jakubowski tricks tricks Mariner's mom and Ransom into saving the day from bats. They go fight the bat infestation. Why does Freeman have a vested interest in saving Starbase 80 from these bats? If you remember back to the first episode, the alternate universe version of Freeman worked on Starbase 80. And our Freeman is not about to be upstaged by alternate universe Freeman. So we do have to go toe-to-toe with this gigantic bat down in the maintenance labyrinth. It's all very amusing. It's all very funny. It's all very enjoyable. If you don't think about it too hard and you just go along for the ride and enjoy your belated Halloween episode, this ain't that bad. As for the episode Starbase 80 with the question mark, visually, it's a real treat for me to be around things I understand again. The old-timey technology with the red piping on it and the accent colors, the red on black and things like that, and yellow pipes and gray and wall comms, and the turbo lift where you still have to hold the thing and then see where you want to go. So great. It was so good. And on top of that, Starbase 80, it just has a lot of cool characters. It has a lot of cool little background things, lots of little Easter eggs. We get the decon gel, by the way. We have to decontaminate ourselves to go into Starbase 80. We have to use the old-timey decon gel from 200 years ago. I don't know. We had it in 2150, and then Lower Decks is 2380s, 2280s, 2180s, 200 and some odd years ago. I don't know when they stopped using decon gel, but it was somewhere around there. And of course Ransom loves it, and he's laying it on thick. He's using it to lube up Gene to get him to pull him out of a pipe. He's using it on his mustache so he doesn't have to smell the nastiness of Starbase 80. Man, I gotta get me some of this decon gel. Musically, I didn't really notice anything going on. There's the standard kind of horror musical stings that you would expect when you see a zombified character. Nothing out of the ordinary, nothing really to write home about, unfortunately. Plot-wise, if you're thinking about it logically, Would Starbase 80 really be allowed to degenerate this far? Is that really becoming a Starfleet? Is that something you would expect? I think Starbase 80 would probably be better served as a museum piece and preserved as it is. It's a veritable Deep Space Nine, but from the 2200s. If you look at it, the way it's operated, the way there's little stores around here, someone is selling vintage Starfleet uniforms that people died in. Let's get me some of those. And we arrive here because of a failure with our navigational processor. I assume brought on from a malfunction that was caused by the parasite living in the cetacean officers and cetacean ops. Maybe that's a stretch. Maybe I'm just filling in the blanks here. And then we can only go to Starbase 80 to fix our navigational processor. And we end up helping Starbase 80, but Starbase 80 also helps us. So it's a real give and take here. And in terms of overall plot for this season, you know how I always like to look at things, where we start and where we end up. We start off lost or stuck without a navigational processor. And then we just end up with a navigational processor, I assume, and we're on our way. It's a status quo plot that kind of loops back on itself. And so long as your episode is written well, if it's fun, that's a great plot to have, I must say. Harkens back to the older days of Star Trek, when you could watch one episode and then just say, that's it, I'm good, bye-bye, thanks for the story. Something I'm a little bit nostalgic for, and something I'm looking forward to in, well, the next season of Strange New Worlds. See you there, by the way. Thematically is actually where this episode is strong. So you can already tell I'm probably not like this episode. But this episode's strong in one dimension, or two, out of our usual four, so it's split down the middle, which means it could be a little bit controversial, in that some people could probably hate this episode, and some people could probably love it, or some people could probably think it's okay. Which one do you think I'm at? Thematically, we even say it outright. Kassia says, this is like the commander, she has 3 pips on her uniform, after all, of Starbase 80. I believe in second chances. And after watching this episode, I believe in second chances too. You see, we wrote off Starbase 80 as this hellhole. We go there, we give them our disease, and they help us get over it. Look, corn dog guy Chad saves our characters from zombies by distracting them with corn dogs. He's a real hero. Dr. Horseberry knocks out the cetacean officer and then captures the parasite under a bucket, literally saving the day. And our character Eugene, he knows how to get the best of Freeman and Ransom to get them to help fix the station. And Kassia is our tour guide for this episode and carries us through all the different necessary locations on Starbase 80. And it's hard for me to imagine these characters like surviving without the Starbase 80 crew. What would happen if they weren't there to defeat, this parasite, in a sense? Would the Cerritos crew survive? We needed Starbase 80, after all, more than they need the Cerritos. You would think if you went to this ancient starbase, we could help them, but it's really the opposite. And turning the tables like that, and getting second chances, and looking at somebody from a primitive station who, on first inspection, is either crazy, lazy, or dangerous in some sense. It turns out, second chances, those people are none of those things. And they're actually here to help you, and they're your friends. And actually, in many ways, they're like your peer. And I think that thematic string is woven into all the different plot elements of this episode. If you watch it again, you'll see what I mean. And I don't know how hard the writers were trying to get that across, but it really came through to me. And I really did enjoy that. My enjoyment from that overshadowed all the weird things like the pointlessness of Kassia being an Elorian. I don't know why that was there. Why it's important that Horseberry is British. Why they bring it up. Why is Starbase 80 in this much of a state of disrepair? Would it really work like that? All these little things don't really matter. I bring them up just as out of due diligence to you, and anyone watching this that I've noticed these things. But I've noticed a lot better than I've noticed worse with this episode. With all these things out of the way, I'm going to have to go ahead and give Starbase 80, a solid 6 out of 10. I like it a lot more than the first 2 episodes and the 3rd episode. But episodes 4 and 5, for me, they're hitting. I don't think this one's going to hit with everyone. I can see where people wouldn't like it. But for me, just going for a fun roller coaster ride on what should have been a Halloween episode, well, that's, for me, that's good. And is it good for you? I don't know. I'm Lieutenant Mark, and I'm going to see you for the next episode of Lower Decks in our final season, whatever it may be. I'm going to see you for next time I see you. Signing off, I'm Lieutenant Mark. Goodbye. Starbase 80?